Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig and I'm delighted to be here with you. If you've been watching my podcast, you'll know that what I'm trying to do here is to create an environment where we're basically giving humankind a pat on the back, ourselves, creation, and really recognizing what we have done in history, what we are doing, and what we will do. I'm pretty impressed with humankind, albeit not entirely. There's a lot of shit out there, if you will. But I do that through inspiring interviews, of which we no doubt have one today. Before I dive into our interview, I just want to talk about a couple of character traits of humankind. And this is according to AI, by the way. If you don't use AI, use it, at least not to destroy the world, but you use it for writing and for drawing upon ideas that it's very efficient and you may not be able to do otherwise. I've started using it asking simple questions such as, what are the attributes of humankind that are required for goodness and kindness? And this is what AI told me. Compassion is number one. Number two is generosity, sharing resources, time, and talent with others selflessly and without expecting anything in return. That's a big deal. Courage, gratitude, empathy, understanding and sharing the feelings of others and acting with sensitivity toward their experience and perspectives. Guess what? Empathy is a learned behavior. Yeah, it's a learned behavior. And the good news there is that if you find that one of your kids is not as empathetic as you would like, you can actually train them on it. And go online and you can find a ton of stuff on this. Empathy is a learned behavior. Forgiveness, altruism, respect, unity, and hope. Hope's a big deal. Inspiring optimism and belief in better possibilities and working towards a brighter future for oneself and others. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is my very, very dear friend. We go way back, Jonathan Rosen. How are you, Jonathan?
Hi, thanks for having me.
We go way back for like what, 15 minutes or something?
Well,
Right?
yes, but I didn't want to say during the pre-interview portion, but I did want to say it here on the air that my former family name, not for me, was Rosensweig, and it was changed, I believe, by my grandfather. That's the story that I told, that I used to think that it was like an Ellis Island thing, but it wasn't. I think he changed it. He shortened it to Rosen. So who knows? Maybe we're related.
Yeah, we could be brothers.
Yes.
Do you know how he spelled Rosensweig?
I think it was with the W. As far as I hear the story. I heard the story. I think it was with the W.
Interesting. Like I go to my grandparents where they're buried, and I look at their tombstones, and the spelling of Rosensweig is consistently different. Consistently
Right.
different.
Yeah.
You're right. Sometimes it's very much Polish, like a CZ or something, you know. But there's a lot of Rosenzweigs out there, Jonathan. A lot. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the author. Jonathan is the author.
I may have family that I'm not.
Yeah, you know, I think if we invested enough time and looked into it,
we could probably find the link somewhere.
we're
Yes.
probably related somehow, right? Yeah. But we all know we're for sure related to Adam and Eve.
That's
maybe.
it. Yes.
Maybe. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Rosen is the author of the spooky middle grade titles, including Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies and its sequel From Sunset Till Sunrise. So we have a true blue children's story writer.
Yes.
And that is exciting as hell, man. I love what you do.
No, I appreciate that. No, they're fun. I love writing for that age, probably because I never matured past that.
Yeah, I want to delve into that, into your psyche a little bit. You're probably childlike in nature. Let's go there in a second. He's as well as a co-editor of the anthology of Jewish stories, Coming of Age 13 B'nai Mitzvah Stories, which is great. Jonathan's the co-host of the YouTube channel Pop Culture Retro, as well as the host of the new podcast, The Jewish Lens. If you want to see more, learn more about him, go to houseofrosen.com. So, Jonathan, my first question was, I'm thinking about people who write kids stories and do it well, and you've been critiqued quite positively over time. What is it about you that allows you to basically go into the minds, the brains, the disposition of kids? How do you know what to write for them?
I was half kidding before about saying that never matured much past that age. Thing is that I loved that age was one of my favorites growing up around that 13, 14 year age, 12 to 14 maybe. That the movies that I watched, the stories that I read, it's that sense of wonder and like discovering things at that age. And I love seeing stories through a character of that age. And it was just such a fun age because you really you're like at the age of 13 to me, it's you're not a little kid that you need your parents for everything. So you can go out, you're a little bit more independent and you go out discovering things for good or bad, but we do go exploring. I went exploring a lot. I wanted to discover new things. So it is like that sense of always finding something new. And that's the age that I like to write for.
Do you have particular memories of that age in terms of some exploration that you did, an adventure that you took? Did you get it? Like, did you get in trouble?
I was really a good kid, so I really was. But look, we've all been in trouble for things, but I was really a good kid. But yeah, at the age of 13, I was living in Israel, and there are a lot of we lived in for a Merkaz Klita, which was like an absorption center for immigrants, and it was right. There were a lot of hills around us, a lot of like different places, and we went exploring in them a lot. So we went, out checking things out, what's behind the rocks, what animals we could find. And I would come home often, much to my parents' chagrin, with turtles, because I found a lot of turtles there, and I kept them as pets. So I think I had around 7 at one point until my parents said, no more turtles. but yeah, it was fun to explore.
What was it like for you living in Israel at that time?
It was tough. I was at that age, I was a very shy kid. And so it was tough. It was tough to make friends, but I did. I had a nice group of friends because, absorption center. So it was like all from all different places in the world. So I had American friends, I had Argentinian friends, I had Russian friends at that time. So it was like really the first time like opening my eyes to all these different, places, traditions, customs from different people. So that was fun being there. It was also not so fun at some points because, you're coming into a new culture and, a new way of doing things too from the natives. So it was tough to learn things at around that age. You always like, that's why I had a lot more friends who were immigrants than I guess native born Israelis at that time, because it was just, we were all in the same experience together.
So your father is from Mexico, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And your mom's from New York.
My mom's from New York.
Okay, we should say your mom is Marcia. Thank God she's still with us. Your dad was Benjamin Franklin Rosen, which I love.
Mexican name Benjamin Franklin. Yes.
Yeah, he was a teacher, and he has passed. I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. Was he a good guy? Your dad?
Very good guy. Very good.
He was.
I miss
what
him.
What was he like, Jonathan?
He was very studious. He was very. He had a good sense of humor. He always wanted to, he was very into Judaism. I'll say that. So I got, that a lot of that from him. He believed very strongly, affiliated himself very strongly with the Jewish people. So we were never religious growing up, but we always obeyed all the customs and followed all the traditions. So he learned all the time about Judaism and things. I'm not talking about like rabbinical study like that Torah or anything. Not that. But just reading about that, and he was very into Holocaust studies. I always used to joke that unless there was like and I hate saying it like this there, but unless there was a swastika on a book, he didn't buy it because he was always reading. And one of the cool things when I was growing up, he did a lot of interviews at that time, with Holocaust survivors, and he took me on several of them. So it was like I got to hear it as a kid, some of their stories.
I had a debate when my son was growing up with many of my family members and friends. I said I don't want to teach my son about the Holocaust till he's about 12 or 13. I think the school that he went to, a public school, got to him before I did, having to do with that education. But you know what I thought, Jonathan, and tell me what your thoughts are on this. I thought I do not want my son at 7 or 8 years old to know the barbarism of Nazi Germany. And a lot of people argued with me. They would say, no, 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 he's a Jew. He needs to know that. I said, no, he doesn't. He needs to be a kid, and he'll know enough of it later on in life. Well, what's your take on that? When did you teach your kids?
It's a fine line always with that, and I could see both perspectives. And I talk about it a lot now. It's just I'm very much like I try to shield my kids from a lot of things. My kids, I'll go back to my upbringing in a second, but I try to shield my kids from a lot of things, a lot of Jew hatred and things like that. I experienced it. I got any. I say this all the time. I'm not a fighter, but I've been in many fights, and a lot of times it's when you're Jewish you have to. But I always want to shield it. I always wanted to shield my kids from that, and now, after October 7th, that dream is shattered. My kids see it. My kids see it on the news every day, and see it, out, not necessarily out about where we live, but it really is like on the news, social media, and things. So that's shattered. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer as to when to introduce it to your kids. I was introduced to it very young. Like I said, I went with my father to think. My father, I don't know, I think must have been around 8 years old. Took me to see. It was probably not the time. Took me to see the movie The Boys from Brazil. The cloning of Hitler story, the sci-fi story. So I was really introduced to it very young and learned about things very young. So I grew up watching a lot of Holocaust documentaries, reading things as well, and I was able to get to only one thing really I couldn't get through, but
well, what was that?
There was one. This is even not even as a kid. It was a little bit later on. I've watched many Holocaust documentaries. The only one that I just could not finish was the one on Mengele, the experiments, and that one just got me too much that I couldn't finish the documentary.
Oh yeah. Do you get that stuff in your head that won't go out?
Yeah, it's a lot now too. A lot, I say it after, going back to my kids. I did try. My kids were introduced to it, but I don't to a degree, not as much as I was. But yeah, there are things now that I can't get out of my head, and it's not even Holocaust related anymore. It's now the after post October 7th things. When I see some of the things that happen, I hear some of the stories. I just can't get it. I write at night, so I wake up. I go to sleep very late, and sometimes I just wake up in the middle of the night. And since Israel's ahead of us in hours, I constantly am checking Twitter to see what's going on there. But the one that I just can't get out of my head is when the Hamas terrorists picked up those two Israeli kids after killing the parents. I cannot get that image out of my head.
Yeah, why do you think that one specifically?
Because of the children, that the barbarism, they killed the parents and then just holding the kids like nothing. And I just always think of my kids, and it goes back to the protecting of our children. How you said you wanted to protect your kids, I want to protect my kids, and there are certain times you can't, and it's terrifying.
How do you think you were born? You live in Florida now, right?
Yeah.
You lived in Israel. You lived in New York.
Lived in Mexico too for a couple of years.
Yeah. So you have a lot of different nationalities inside of you. You're a big eclectic human being. How do you think you would be in terms of bravery? Like, we're all looking at our IDF brothers and sisters. I've interviewed some super duper soldiers like Nir Mamon, who's 47, has 5 kids living here in Toronto, and he's been deployed to Israel 3 times.
Wow.
He's the real deal. How do you think you would be in terms of courage and bravery as an IDF soldier? Because I think about it myself. I don't have a lot of balls, Jonathan. I just don't.
Yeah. You know what? But you would when it comes to your kids. I don't. Like I said, I'm not a fighter, but yet I've been in many fights, and it's sometimes you just have to. And I've people, any fight, almost just about every fight I've been in is because I'm Jewish. Yeah. And it's I grew up. When I went to high school, there were I think I was one of 4 Jews in my high school at that time. So people said things, and I stood up for myself. You don't know what you're capable of until you're faced with that situation. I I'm not someone that looks for something. I'm not that type of person either. I don't think I, look and confront. But if I knew my kids were in danger, that's something different. For myself, I probably would. I would probably run to avoid conflict. I don't want to mess with anything. If unless it came to my face and you're stuck. But if I thought my kids were in danger, I probably would do whatever.
So when you were younger, am I understanding correctly? You were actually in physical fights.
I was, yes.
And how did you do in those fights?
I always looked at it this way. I don't, even now looking back, I don't know whether winning or losing the things too. It didn't matter. It almost didn't matter. It's just I wanted to make sure that they knew that they were in a fight and they were not going to, mess with me about things. Yeah. And I remember one kid, said to me that he's like saying everything, every time that something is anti-Semitic, it's always you Jewish this, you Jewish that. It's always the Jew is the preface to any other statement. And it was, I'm not, I'm going to hit you in your Jewish nose or anything like that. It was going to think, and nothing fazed me or whatever. They're just, to me, words. And then the kid spit on me, and then I punched him in the face. that was it. So it's a thing about I don't go looking, and this is a thing. I seem like a violent person, but no, I'm not that. But it's a thing about standing up for yourself. Some at times.
When you punched him in the face, what did you hurt him?
Probably not enough.
Right. I'm getting to know you, Jonathan. I'm getting to figure this out.
Not enough. But we were in the middle. It was in the middle of a class in high school, for real. It was in the middle of a class that the kids started it, and the teacher separated it pretty fast, but it was right in the middle of a class.
Jonathan, my challenge, and my son has the same challenge, and I'm curious what you have to say about it, is I can't take the idea of hurting someone physically. I can't take it.
I don't like it either. But,
it's awful I think a lot of Jews are like that.
I would agree with you. I would definitely agree with you that I don't like either. I hate the thought of myself hurting anyone at all. And I probably even pulled a punch then because I don't like violence. I hate violence. But again, I go back to sometimes you just can't escape it. It's, and I think especially when you're Jewish.
And where was your father with all of this? Did he say, go son, good for you, like stay in there, if someone spits on you, punch them in the face? Would your dad say that?
With turning this all into it, I have a story with that too. But my father was not a fighter, but knew how to fight, but probably much better than I did. He was in the Navy, and when he was, he was in the U.S. Navy, actually. At one point, he was in the Cuban Missile Crisis. He was on one of the ships.
Oh, you're kidding!
It was, but I think I won't tell that story. But there were times that he just felt that you had to stand up as well.
But you don't want to tell the story?
Yeah, there was one time my friends and I, we were also in Israel, and we were surrounded by people, wanting to hurt us because we were Jewish. And they were like much, much older. I was around 13. They were probably a good 10 years older than us. And one of them hit me. I told my father went out there looking for the kids, the guys, they weren't kids anymore, that did this. And he found one of them and grabbed one of them and he punched the guy, but they all swarmed on my dad. I felt awful. I felt bad that I told my dad even the story because because they attacked him afterwards. But he didn't want them messing with his son.
Well, what happened when they attacked him?
There were a couple of other dads there too, but it was a lot on just these couple of guys. My dad wound up with a busted rib after that. But he didn't like anyone messing, with his son, especially, because it was a Jewish thing too.
Yeah, I'm envious of your sort of no shit attitude. I like that. I really do. I wish I had more. I wish I had more of that.
It's just a thing right now. It's on social media. I'm relentless on that right now, just because I think we're at a time right now that if you're not speaking up there. You can't go fighting everyone. I'm not going to go. I'm not the fighter either, like I said. But it's a thing that to me, that if I'm not speaking up now, when am I going to speak up? We're at a point now that I've never seen in my life, that I never thought I would see in my life. Just the rise in anti-Semitism, the just openness of Jew hate. So it's I do what I can. It's like not I'm a keyboard warrior, and that's one of the reasons I started the Jewish podcast too, just because I want Jewish voices out there. But it's such a terrible time right now that you do what you can, I guess.
Tell us about the podcast, the Jewish podcast. What's your goal? What's your objective?
The goal is just to really amplify Jewish voices, get Jewish stories out there. And it doesn't even have to be like, I'm fighting anti-Semitism. It's just, I want Jewish content. It could be fun things. It could be, serious things. I've interviewed so far a little bit mix of both. That some people talking about just anti-Semitism, some people just talking about fun things, but I do want to amplify Jewish voices right now.
And do you feel you've succeeded somewhat?
I'm only 4 or 5 episodes in. I posted 3. I still have 2, recorded that I haven't released yet. I'm always looking for more people to interview. I'll probably call you at one point, but if anyone's listening that wants to, please contact me. But yeah, it's been fun so far, for fun and eye-opening in different ways. I've interviewed people who've spoken up about what's going on with Jews in their world, and some of them, just like I said, just for fun too, just talking about just fun things, and they just happen to be Jewish. We don't really discuss dive into Jewish things, but they just happen to be Jewish, and like I said, I just want to amplify voices.
It's interesting because the whole thing about anti-Semitism is very extraordinarily complex. I don't have to tell you that or anybody else. As an example, I've spoken to people who, an individual who lives in Malta, lovely person, Rosa. She's not Jewish, but she has a very, very powerful Jewish consciousness, and she has actually experienced anti-Semitism.
By association.
By association. Right. Now, I just spoke to a fellow, Benjamin, in Uganda, the Abu Daya community there.
I wanted to watch that. I saw that you did that. How was that interview? I'm going to watch that one.
Oh, it's fascinating, Jonathan. I mean, when you and I speak, we're basically Jewish, white, Anglo-Saxons, whatevers, right? We're white guys. And so we understand our culture. We understand our language, more or less, But when you're dealing with people from a continent whose culture is so dramatically different than ours in so many ways, it's fascinating to pick up on the nuances of their language, even, their body language. And Benjamin is just a hugely generous of spirit human being. He sang Adon Olam for us.
That's fantastic.
And you can only imagine, through his understanding of our Jewish music, how beautiful that was. So, but he does not experience anti-Semitism on any level in Uganda. Right. Nothing.
Funny thing, it's nothing to do with him, but just funny thing here. I feel less. I grew up in New York, as I told you. But I'm from New York. I know you can't tell from the accent, but I experience it less here in Florida now than I think people in New York are. That from what I see and from I hear from friends and everything, and that's amazing to me. Just because New York is there are so many Jews, and but what I see going on in the streets is horrifying there.
Well, why do you think you haven't seen that much of it in Florida?
Why do I think? I think it's because there are probably more repercussions here for it than what goes on in New York. It's allowed to go on in New York.
Yeah, your governor's a pretty tough guy.
With that, absolutely, yes. And it's like I said, in New York, it's allowed, and if there are no repercussions, why not do anything you want?
You're right. We touched on your father, God bless his soul, Benjamin Franklin Rosen. Let's go back a little bit to family, because I'm always fascinated by people's upbringing. Your mother, Marcia, thank God she's still with us.
Yes.
What is she like, Jonathan?
She's a great person. She's very nice. I speak to her daily. And she's also, very concerned about things that are going on now. It's funny. My mom used to talk about, that make sure you have your passports. You never know what's going to happen. And I was like, okay, Ma, okay. And this is the first time in my life, like, maybe I should have it ready. You never know. So
Like, tell us a bit more about it. Is your mother short?
she's shorter now than she was when I was growing up.
That's what happens. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's definitely shrunk. So
Is she proud of you?
I would think so. I hope so. But yes, I think so. She tells me
Like,
that a lot.
she does tell you?
Yes, yes.
So is your mom the type of woman who say, honey, I love you very much? Will she say that?
She does say that, yes.
And did your dad say that?
My dad also. My dad would talk about things there too. Not as much as my mom, but yes. But yes, he was a very, very loving and caring person.
And you would say that to your kids?
Always. Probably too much for their liking. But yes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, Dad, enough already, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am really taken by your stories here, because not only have you written kids stories, but you've written like scary kids stories, right?
I do. I'll quantify it. I do love horror stories, but again, quantifying it, I don't like straight horror like gore and just like
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not like a Friday the 13th or fan. I like horror mixed with comedy. So that's kind of what I wrote. It's I like more like a Shaun of the Dead, even Nightmare on Elm Street, because Freddy used to joke around a lot as he killed people. So I like horror infused with comedy. I think they both lend to each other very well, and those are the stories that I write. A mix of horror comedy. Knowing I have characters that just talk about the absurd. Horror movies can be absurd. Just they can acknowledge it but still be scared. You still have to deliver, even though you're trying to for humor, you still have to deliver the frights, still have to deliver the scares. You can't just make it campy. You have to give them, because you have a horror audience who do want to be scared as well, so you have to respect that.
Yeah, this whole thing of scary and being scared and frightened, it's very compelling to me, because I'm a bit of a wuss. And I'm not trying to be deprecating, because the truth is I am, like, I do not want to be frightened. So if I'm flipping through the channels and I see a scary movie, honestly, Jonathan, I'm just going to flip right past it, because I'm scared enough in life. What is it that compels you to write about scary stuff and to embrace it? Do you like that buzz? Is that what it is?
Again, look, I do like it infused with humor. I really am not a straight horror movie, although there are some that I think are classics that I love, like The Shining or Poltergeist. I love those movies. But for the most part, I'm really not just straight horror. I do need infused with humor in it as well. That tension breaker at times. I don't know if you've seen all the Lost Boys, Fright Night. They had a lot of humor in them as well. Those are the movies that I like. And it's funny, my daughter, my youngest daughter, loves horror movies, and she looks at some of these things like Poltergeist scared the crap out of me as a kid. Yeah. That clown scene got to me. She looked at it like nothing. Like, you were really scared of this?
Does that mean she's fearless?
I don't know, fearless, but she does like watching horror movies. Like, she watched The Shining like nothing. She's watching now American Horror Stories, going through the seasons. There was another recent horror one, The Haunting on Hill House, I believe, that she's also just watched. She's much braver than I am with regard to horror. Even though I write about it, she's much braver watching these movies than I am.
I still want to get to the core of this. When you sit down and you write a story and it has horror in it, and albeit tempered with humor, what's going on in your head while you're writing the horror stuff?
It's fun.
It's fun. Is it fun?
It is fun. It is fun because you're playing with tropes. I like looking at the tropes and seeing how you can twist the tropes, bend the tropes a little bit too. I wrote the second one, From Sunset Till Sunrise, that you mentioned, is a vampire story. So it's I have like things, the counting, playing with it, going through the vampire lore. One of the scenes happens in the school, so they don't have wooden stakes, so they start sharpening pencils to try to use on the vampires. So you'd like to play with the lore a little bit, and the tropes, and seeing what you can come up with. and how to twist it around a little bit.
So here's an explanation of from sunset till sunrise. Devin Dexter and his cousin Tommy just saved the city of Gravesend.
Right.
Now, is that actually a city that you lived in,
I
Gravesend?
grew up in Gravesend, Brooklyn. Yes.
It's called Gravesend.
It's called Gravesend. I think it's like it's over 250 years old. And the funny thing is there isn't an actual cemetery there right in the middle of the town. And it's like between these apartment buildings. It's like, but it's between these apartment buildings. You could walk to it. I think that was the reason for the name, because you walk down the street, Gravesend Neck Road was one of the streets that I lived right off of. And you just follow that road, and you come to the cemetery that's right in between a couple of buildings.
Really?
So yeah, it's very cool. That is a name. And since I grew up in the Gravesend section of Brooklyn, when I was thinking of names, I said, you know what, I can't do better than this actual name than where I grew up. So it was a fun name to incorporate.
I have a book title for you, and a cemetery runs through it. How's that?
Okay.
So listen, Devin Dexter and his cousin Tommy just saved the city of Gravesend from the menace of magical, malicious cuddle bunnies, brought to life by the warlock Herb. I love that you named him Herb, because we all know our uncles were Herbs, right? These old Jewish guys, right? There's always got to be a Jewish angle here, but there's no rest for the wicked as a new mysterious neighbor moves in across the street at night with a coffin.
Right. So yeah, the first book, Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies, was about stuffed animals that came to life and terrorized the town, and the second one had to do with vampires.
Right. So I'll just finish this here. Tommy immediately jumps to conclusions as he thinks this can only mean one thing: vampires.
Right. Yeah, and it's there are some twists in there. Not everything is what you expect right away. But again, I got to play with the lore. And the first one too. The first one was, at first, the whole thing was about witches. They were scared that a witch moved in next door. So it had far less to do with witches eventually than about murderous stuffed animals. But yeah, it's taking that and trying to see what you can come up with. The whole thing for me, making a town with that anything can happen in this town. All these spooky events can happen in this town, in the town of Gravesend.
So when I was a kid, my sister Naomi, who's since passed away, God bless her soul.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I think she was really hypersensitive towards stuffed animals. and I met a bunch of people along the road who go, don't throw that on the couch. Right? I go, why not? It's a stuffed animal because it has feelings, right?
Exactly.
Do you remember when you were a kid, your relationship with stuffed animals?
I had some that I really loved as a kid. Growing up, I had a little bear that I really loved. And then later on, I had a stuffed Donald Duck. So I had some that I really did love. But the idea, and I was just talking about this with a friend yesterday. So it's funny that we were talking, he was saying about how, Chucky in Child's Play is, wouldn't scare him as much because it's like a little, a 1.5 foot tall doll. And I'm thinking it's the opposite of that. To me, they're scarier because they could be anywhere. They could hide, more easily. And I said that's the whole point of it. I might not see the doll where it is at first, and I'm going around the house looking for it, and then it could just be jumping out at me from a hiding spot. Yes. So yeah, it's. I do remember the doll. I used to have several that I loved, but I also think that they could be incredibly scary. I think of those horror movies where they open up the door and like the light shines in on the doll's eyes, just staring straight ahead. Yeah. So those creep me out.
What were your other favorite stuffed animals? You mentioned one or two.
Well, I said the bear, the Donald Duck, but I had, I didn't really have many stuffed animals. Those were the two that I think of the most. I had some just display that I weren't favorites. They were just on display. I had a lot of action figures that I was much more into. So I had a lot of those growing up.
Well, man, I am so fascinated by your mind. I'm trying to get to a point where I understand it. So you
have to look at anything when you're writing. You have to look at anything. Anything can be capable of a story. to me. You look at any, I'm looking at a mug on the desk. What kind of story can I make out of a mug on the desk? And I remember doing that in school growing up. One of the things one of my first memories about that was I was in a class, and there was a globe. A lot of classes have globes in them. So I just remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I, went and I could touch the country on the globe and then magically appear in that country? And I started thinking about a story to that. So I was like always working what can be used in a story, what elements can I make with it, just anything fun to create out of any object.
So you think in images?
I try to think in movies. Everything that I write, I always try to think of how I would see it on the screen play out before me, before I write it.
Yeah, it's like a story. You plot out a storyboard basically in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting because I think there are a lot of kids out there, and they may not speak about it because they may feel it's unacceptable to speak about it, or they're embarrassed about it, or maybe they're just not conscious of it. But I know myself, as an example, when I was a kid and I would lie in bed and I would look up at the ceiling, which was created by, you remember the designs they used to put in the ceilings?
Yes.
They look like dots, and I would see faces in them.
Okay.
And I would look at my aunt's paintings, flowers, and also I would see character and personality staring out at me. Later on in life, I realized there's actually a name for that. I can't remember what it is where you see faces in things. So have you thought about your own thinking process and how you see life?
Do I think about it? Not. I don't think really. I just, like I said, but my mind is always racing. I have files and files. Any of story ideas come to me like all the time, and like I think most writers, but they come to me all the time, and I always I'm quick to put them down. Like I said, I have files of potential stories I did. Am I going to get to every single one? No, there's no way. But I always write them down and give like a little thought, so I'll remember them should I want to come to them later. Should I want to explore that later? Sometimes I start writing a story, and after a little bit of thinking, it's not going the way I want, and either I'll abandon it, which I have several of the stories that I abandoned, or I might decide to pick it up at a later time, which I've done as well. But many times I'll start a couple of different stories at once and see which one grabs me more, and that's the one that I'll pursue. But yeah, a story, like I said, story ideas come constantly, and it's just a matter of writing them down so you don't forget them and seeing what I might want to explore. It's again looking at objects or outside on the living your life,
yes,
and you overhear a conversation that just sparks an idea. You see something like, hey, what if? And those are the biggest words always to me is what if? What if this happened? What if that happened? How can you further propel the story? And even watching, movies or shows, sometimes I'm like, they should have taken this in another direction, and that can spark something else too.
Yeah, very good. Often I'll watch a movie and I'll say that ending just was not appropriate, and
Right.
come up with my own. I'll come up with my own ending. I think, which makes a lot more sense.
Right.
You wrote a book called Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies.
Right. That's
12-year-old Devin Dexter has problems. His sister Abby is annoying. His cousin Tommy sees conspiracies everywhere, and his new neighbor Herb might be a warlock. That's a problem when your neighbor's a warlock. When strange things start happening, like the hot new Christmas toy, the Cuddle Bunny coming to life and turning evil, Devin and Tommy set out to stop them and prove Herb is a warlock. Will they have enough time before the town of Gravesend is overrun by the cutest little murderers? They're just adorable, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Tell me something, Jonathan. What's your relationship to Devin, to Abby? Are they somewhat real to you?
Devin, I always say most of my main characters, Devin's me at that age. Probably more adventurous than I was at that age, less scared. But majority, my main characters are me to a degree. I mean, how can it not? But even when they're doing things that I would never have done, or they have traits that I would never have done, my personality is in there. So a lot of my thought process is in there for that age. They think like me. So to an extent, they're all me without being me. They'll be much braver than I was, and but it's like I joke on class visits too. Abby's the little sister that annoys the hell out of Devin all the time, and I have a little sister too, but but here's what I joke with class is that in the sequel, from Night Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies to the sequel From Sunset Till Sunrise, if in that one the little sister is taken by vampires, she's kidnapped by vampires. So to me, in the story, Devin goes off. You have to save my little sister. To me, my little sister was taken by actual vampires. Hey, she's on her own. My kids,
Yeah.
my parents were still young enough to have other kids. So I'm not going into a vampire's house. So that's the difference.
Yes.
Right.
Have you ever created a personality within your characters that is so removed from you, you have absolutely no idea where this came from?
Yeah, the main character is a lot of me. I've written other ones that are not like me. Also, I did. My agent has an adult thriller that I wrote. Also, I try to veer away from. I try to veer away from kid lit a little bit. So one of the the characters, one of the bad characters in there is just so evil, just really evil that nothing of me is in that one, and nothing that I would ever consider doing it. But you write that way. You write the evil for them too. But yeah, you have to use your imagination. You try to infuse it with something that makes sense to the story. That doesn't necessarily have to be you. Like I said, my main characters, even though they're not me, there are certain degrees of me. It depends how much I'm infusing.
Well, what are your credentials to write about evil? Like, how do you know about evil?
Well, look, we see evil. I've read about evil. I know things that I've experienced evil, but the world is a lot of times an evil place. I like to think for the most part, I'm very Pollyanna-ish. I'm very, optimistic, but I've seen a lot of things that are evil.
Yes.
And so you write, you do write. You want someone to hate. If you have an evil character in your book, you want someone to hate them. You don't want it like wishy-washy. You don't want it on the fence about it. I want someone to be hated. I want someone that they deserve whatever's going to happen to them at the end.
Wow.
That's
heavy duty. Do you go into schools and read these books?
I don't do a lot of reading. I talk about them. To me, I always hated when someone came and read the book to you.
Yes.
It's 10 minutes of whatever it is, and it just gets boring. I'd rather talk about the book, try to entice someone to want to read the book. It's interesting to them. An audience, to me, to listen to someone read for 5-10 minutes is not fun. So
I hear you. Yeah.
I'd rather just talk about the book and try to entice them that way.
But by the way, I hear Brooklyn in your accent all over the place.
It's never left. I've lived in many places around the world, and the Brooklyn has never left.
Say to me, Avrum, let's go play stickball. Let me hear you say that.
Avrum, let's go play stickball.
Stickball, yeah. But my question is, when you talk about your stories in a classroom setting, are the kids' responses ever really like compelling to you, like fascinating almost? Have you ever had kids who say, no, I really like that evil kid, Yeah, well, it depends. Look, they've not seen my adult stuff, so yes. And it's funny, in the first book, I had a character who was meant to be just the bad guy and come up, and I enjoyed writing him too much that I didn't want to get rid of him at the end. So I changed an ending from the original ending in my mind. I changed the ending to make it that he wasn't going to be going anywhere, that he was going to be hanging around, because I enjoyed that character. It was like, I think my favorite character, one of the two favorite characters to write. Just he was so much fun. So I kept him around. But I went to one book festival where a little girl who had read my book chastised me because of one of the things that I did in the book. She was not
She was not, oh, because of the bunnies. That's the first one. She liked stuffed bunnies. She had a bunny at home, and she was not happy that I did something make the bunnies evil. So she let me have it because of that, which was very amusing to me.
What did you respond to her?
That for the sequel, I'll take her ideas into consideration.
You said that to her? Were you
Yeah.
were you being honest?
I would always take something into consideration, but I found it very amusing, like I said, that she was so annoyed about the bunnies aspect of it.
Right. No, I understand. When I'm a writer too, and I'm an artist, and I did some art after October 7th. I call it my October 7th art.
Yeah.
And I look at it, and it disturbs me that I'm able to paint that I have that wherewithal, that I have that consciousness.
Well,
And
it came from that place, then I'm sure
what's that?
it came from that place of seeing what happened.
So it's exactly the point I'm making. I
Yeah.
want to ask you about this. Is like sometimes I go really deeply inside of myself,
Mhm.
and I go, Avram, don't go there, man. Like run from that. Shut that down. Don't go any further. Like, how far can you go inside of your own head with that evilness?
In the adult thriller that I wrote, I went far. I have some pretty disturbing scenes, I would say, in there. Yeah, I think you have to. It depends on the story, depends on the character, that you have to allow yourself. And it's not my favorite thing to do. I'd much rather write humor. I'd much rather things, but depending on the story, you have to allow yourself to go to that place. All depending. If it's needed in the story, if it's suitable for the story, I think you have to explore that path, that avenue.
Is that a healthy thing for you?
I think so. I think, look, it's to me, it's much better to explore it and put it down on paper in a story than exploring it out in real life, which I would never do that. But you have to get creative. You have to let your creative uh, juices flow. You have to let your mind wander. What can I write about in this? And it's not a lane that I want to be in all the time. For sure not. Like I much rather write fun things. Even the horror that I like to write, I like to make it fun horror. That's the thing. But I did allow myself to go down the path of really horrific things that were done.
How were you after you had written it, or while you were writing it? Inside, how did you feel? Like, where were you at?
I think it was fine because I think it was just I know that this is the character, and plus I know that this character is not going to make it at the end. I know this character is going to get what's coming to them at the end, and that to me is the satisfying part, seeing how I'm going to kill this character. I'm going to do something to this character. Like I said, I can't be in that headspace of, like, you saw the movie Silence of the Lambs.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's a movie I've only seen once in my life, just
Yes.
once. A great movie. I can't watch it again. It's too
I also
disturbing.
can't.
Right, too disturbing for me. I couldn't be in that headspace for long to do repeated things. And it was unsatisfying to me is that the killer, the really evil person, doesn't get it at the end. That's probably why I can't
Ah.
I can't do a repeat of that. It's when evil gets away with it, I can't be in that headspace. I need to see the punishment.
Okay, so tell me if I'm being accurate here, okay? When I watch things happening to our people, the Jewish people,
Right.
having the shit kicked out of them. Guy, you remember the guy in New York that was attacked,
Yeah.
right? That religious guy. Or as you said, you mentioned before about that video, those two kids
Right.
being schlepped away by terrorists. There's a thought that runs through my head is that I wish I had a gun and I could kill
Right.
those people.
Right.
And I think a lot of people feel that way, although they may not say it, right? When you write and your evil character gets killed off because you want to make sure that they get theirs, I'm guessing in some sort of psychotherapeutic sort of way that you're allowing yourself to kill off evil, not physically, but metaphorically. And that could be a healthy thing. Am I saying anything that makes sense here?
Yeah, I think that's it 100%. There are things that I wish I could do. That I want to see evil punished. There are too many times, like we just said a couple of minutes ago, that evil does get away with things, and I can't have that in my stories. I need to see evil punished. I need to see evil suffer the consequences. And here's another some of the bad people that I put in my stories too. I base on people that I know that I can't stand.
Yeah.
So I want to see them punished as well for certain things. They always say, "Don't piss off a writer; you'll be in their stories," and that is 100% true for me, at least, because I put in people that I don't like, that I wanted to see things, but I can't go and do actual things physically. I don't want to be arrested. I don't want to. So I do it. I get my revenge the way that I can.
Have you ever let any of your evil characters off the hook and they weren't killed? They didn't die?
Well, yeah, like I said, the first one in Night of the Living Cuddle Bunnies, that person was not supposed to die, but was supposed to, something happened to him, because that was my evil character, but it's a different situation because he was fun. And I said, I write humor and things. So he wound up not being the big bad that originally they thought. I changed it because I liked the character. I thought he was such a fun character to write. So I did change it. That character now stays alive, and was going to be through however many books the series would go.
Oh, the character did tshuva.
Did what?
Did tshuva.
Yes. That's exactly
work through his problems.
Right.
He became a good guy. Now, do you write to educate or do you write to entertain?
Entertain. I don't. If there's something that's educational in there, sometimes I'll maybe put a thing. Most part, I like just being entertained. I don't like stories that have that heavy-handed message in it. This is what you need to do. This is agendas. I call it agenda storytelling. I don't want agenda story. I just want to entertain the reader. I don't want to put in my philosophy on life. My I don't like those stories myself, and people do them well. Some of them, and I understand it. But for me, I just want to entertain. I don't want to be lectured on any one particular point.
Okay. I want to read a list of classic kid stories, and I want you to tell me if any of them jump out at you, if you have any memories of them and thoughts, if they were encouraging to you in terms of Where the Wild Things Are.
Love that book. I think it's a really fun book. Just the sense of exploring new places. I do love that book.
Because of the exploring of new places.
Yeah.
Okay. By Morris Sendak.
Right.
Charlotte's Web by E.B. White.
Another really fun book. I remember I saw the movie before I read the book. I did read the book after, but I was bawling.
Were you? Yeah.
I was in I was in tears on that book.
Which part made you cry, Jonathan?
Well, the ending with Charlotte, the spider. So,
at the end, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
just tell me the ending. I don't remember the ending. Tell it to me.
The spider that's helping him throughout the story dies, but then he becomes friends with the kids, one of the kids spiders. But just knowing that the spider died, I don't do well with death stories, and I don't know if Bridge to Terabithia is on there, but I can't. That's another story that I can't do because it's so sad.
Did you mourn for a long time when your dad died?
Yes. My mom still has never gotten over it, and I hope, and I say that knowing that she'll probably listen to this, watch this afterwards. But yeah, I don't know how you feel. I mean, I'm still not. I live day to day. I live everything. I don't think about it, but I do think about my father every day. I don't dwell on the death aspect of it, but I miss him. I miss him a lot, and there are times that I just want, hey, I would say that to him, and life would be very different.
Do you talk to him out loud?
Every day before I go to sleep.
Oh, you do?
Every single day.
Well, yeah. What sort of things would you say to him?
I do the Shema every night.
Yeah. So do I. I do too.
Yes, and so I do talk to him every night, and just like watch over me, my family. Just I'll say what's going on in there, and then when I visit the cemetery, I don't go often, but I do go occasionally to the cemetery, and I'll tell them exactly what's going on with everyone in life. So, and
Is
also again, please watch over us.
is a cemetery visit? I don't mean to be silly here, but
Yeah.
is a cemetery visit like to your dad? Is it an adventure because of who you are and how you write and how you think?
No, it's that, you know what? It's for my dad, and it's funny because it's such a stupid phrase to say, but I do like going to old cemeteries. I do like it. I like I like seeing it. I like seeing the history of it, especially if they're older. And again, stories go through your mind. And I've done haunted cemetery tours at night as well, and those are so much fun. But when I go to my dad, it's not like today. It's just I know I'm going to speak to my dad, and it's just and for the most part, I'm fine. I just talk to him like nothing. Last time I went, and I don't remember the reason why. That's when I started tearing up, and I never usually do. But that the last time I did, just talking to him about things. But it's not like some sense of adventure. It's just I want to tell my dad what's going on with him. But other times, cemetery, I do love going.
Oh, you're an emotional fellow, eh?
I guess I am. Yes.
Yeah. I know. I can sob as well.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. I can't help but ask. So you take people into a cemetery late at night?
I mean, I didn't do the tours. I went on tours.
What was
I
that
would-
like?
It's fat. I love wherever I used to go. Anytime I go on vacation somewhere, I see if they have ghost tours.
Really?
I love that stuff. I go out on cemetery once. I did when I was in London. We went on a ghost tour. I went on the Jack the Ripper tour, so all the spots of where Jack the Ripper killed victims, and I'm fascinated with that thing. I went on ghost tours in England. I went on ghost tours in Scotland, and down in Florida, certain places. So I do go on them. I've stayed at haunted hotels that they told me that you read about ahead of time were haunted. It all depends, and I talk about this with friends also. If I read that there are malevolent spirits in there that seek harm to you in a hotel, I'm not going there. But when I read if the ghosts are like benevolent or just leave you alone, but you can see them, I would go then because I know that they're not going to mess with me. But I didn't see anything. I went out to a haunted hotel in Scotland where there's supposed to be a ghost chambermaid or maid that goes out and feeds the chickens in the courtyard at night. So I did stay up a lot to watch, but I never saw anything. I never saw Loch Ness Monster either, which I tried to do then in
But
Scotland.
you believe in ghosts?
I do. I do believe in that there's something else.
Like another Matrix?
I do believe there can be spirits or something like that. I'm fascinated with that stuff.
Have you seen ghosts?
I had one occurrence that no one's going to convince me otherwise in my life. I had one occurrence in my life when my grandmother passed that I woke up and saw her briefly by my bed. And again, no one's going to convince me that it didn't happen. And no one's going to convince me it's just a dream. It's like I saw her, felt her presence. And that's the only time in my life that I've ever felt that way.
So you're afraid of ghosts that would hurt you,
Right.
but you're not afraid. You're not afraid of ghosts that are friendly.
Correct.
Okay. Would you cherish the opportunity to sit down with a ghost?
100%. Yes.
Why?
To find out what's on the other side, what they see, what they experience. Ask them questions about their life while they were here. And I would absolutely love that. I would really cherish that, to be able to have that ability and find out if there are spirits out there. I would love the opportunity to talk to them. And that's one of the things I think to my dad all the time. He's never answered, but maybe he answers in different ways.
Yeah. So you're not afraid of death?
I didn't say that.
I know. I'm assuming.
No. I think very much am. It's I think about it far too often, probably, and it's something that as I get older, it comes into your mind more. I've had close friends that have died.
I'm sorry.
And it's frightening. It's that I don't feel old, but I've had several people that I know, very well and very friendly with, who have already passed and who are much better shape than I was. So it just makes you, think. It makes you, you can't help but think about it at some point. I don't. It's not like I dwell on it every single day, but it's a concerning thing. Yes.
Well, how old are you?
Are we going there? I'm mid-50s.
So I'm 64.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about one of your friends who died?
I don't want to talk about them particularly. That
Okay.
I don't.
We'll
I
leave
don't want
that.
to. But I've had close friends that.
We will leave that then.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions. There's books that have been written, which I think help children in terms of understanding war
Mhm.
and enemies and hatred in life. One of them, of course, was The Diary of Anne Frank by Anne
Right.
Frank. Have you read that? I'm assuming
I
you
read the Diary of Anne Frank. I've read Night.
by Elie Wiesel.
Elie Wiesel. Yeah. Both great books. I'll say I used to teach Night as well. I used to be a teacher, their history teacher, and teach and have that one. So that one got to me a lot from the time, and it's at this particular time. When I was reading that with students, my dad was sick, already with cancer. So there's a part in there, and I would sometimes struggle not, and sometimes I couldn't help it. Sometimes I would tear up in class because there's a part in Night where he just like he sees his dad like looking so frail, but his dad turns to him and smiles at one point in that book, and that would get me every time because I was thinking about my dad being all frail at that moment, and just that little human spark to smile like I'm okay still. That really got to me. So Night, because it's a father son. I'm trying not to tear up now, because it's a father son story for a lot. For them, pretty much throughout. That one still hits to this day, just because I lost my dad, and I think it also tied in because I mentioned earlier my dad always did Holocaust studies, Holocaust research. So there's so many things that I tie into him while going over that story.
I really feel as though we spent a productive hour together.
Yeah.
I really do, because I have never spoken to an individual who writes children's books with a horror component to them, tempered with humor, as you said. But I was always curious about what lies in the minds of those authors. And I think through our trek together over an hour, we managed to, we managed to figure something out about you.
I think so, probably.
Yeah, like
Oh,
you're
more
it's great that you have humor, as part of your psychological makeup, because you're able to temper the evil in the world. And I think in many ways that's the Jewish story.
I think that is true. I think Jews look at things and try to find the humor in things to cope. It's a very much a coping mechanism, and it's a very much Jewish humor, poking fun at the worst situations. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So that has been fascinating to learn from you, and I thank you very much
Oh,
for
thank you for
sharing
having.
that with. Oh yeah, no, it was lovely. It was lovely to hear, and you're a very interesting fellow. At the end of an interview, people like to say like you're a kind person, you're a generous person, you're a good person. But I would add to that, you're a
I think of
strange.
those things too, but
No, you're definitely that. I can see that, but you're also very strange. You're very out there in terms of your understanding of life, and that's nice because it adds a decent component to, I think, an interview. So I want to thank you so much again for doing this, Jonathan. If people want
my
to read your stuff or know more about you, where can they find you?
well, I'm on houseofrosen.com. That's my website. But I, as you mentioned there, I also have Facebook, Twitter, House of Rosen, Instagram, House of Rosen. But I also do the podcast, Pop Culture Retro, and the Jewish Lens. That could be found.
All right. Well, I'm really excited about this interview, and I thank you again. You're a wonderful person,
Thank you.
with
Likewise.
with a strange side to you. And I wish you well. I wish your family well. And I want to thank everybody for watching and for listening. The show is all about humankind. It's all about patting ourselves on the back, and by meeting people, who are inspiring, as Jonathan is. I think we can glean from them. I think we can grow through them. And I always say, for you out there who are having a problem, sort of hitting your zone or your stride, Listen. It's really important to listen to other people and how they do it. At some point in time, Jonathan Rosen picked up on the fact that he's telling stories. He's a storyteller. That he loves a particular type of genre. So he dove into that, and that takes work, and it takes struggle, and it takes a lot of sweat. But those three components together with some creativity can really, really set you on your path. So figure out what it is, figure out, how to do it, and then jump on that road and just strengthen yourself as a human being and your family and your community and the world in which we live, because we all have the potential to achieve our passions. I believe that very strongly. We'll be back very soon. Once again, thank you for joining the Avrum Rosensweig Show. Have a beautiful day and a beautiful week.